What are you talking about?
You have to. I had an eyelash. I figured it out.
They'll
now.
see that.
Oh.
Yeah. I thought it was a hair here, but it wasn't. It was on my eye.
So you want me to do the whole thing again?
You're laughing, but
Makeup.
How's it? You doing makeup tonight?
I'll do some makeup, but you
Hello and welcome back to War Mysteries. We're joined by Matt. And we have Ed back with us. And I'm Jay, of course, as we know. In this episode, we're going to be exploring the fate of one of the most famous U-boats of the war, the U47, which disappeared in the Atlantic in the early 1940s. On the night of February 20th, 1941, U47 departed the Axis-held port of Lorient on the west coast of France for her 10th combat patrol. She was one of the most successful U-boats of the war, having sunk already almost 190,000 tons of shipping under the command of the notorious and vengeful Gunter Prien. At the time, Captain Prien was in competition with other U-boat commanders in a race to be the first captain in the U-boat fleet to sink 250,000 tons of Allied shipping. After attacking an enormous oil tanker on March 7th, radio messages went unanswered, position reports were not made, and the submarine fell silent. This is the disappearance of U47. Right then, boys, so we're talking obviously about U47, Type 7B U-boat, which was part of the Atlantic Wolfpack fleet.
actual model.
That it's a Type 7. That specifically is actually a Type 7C, which is it's got a slightly different conning tower.
It's not like UB40.
UB40 was World War One, mate.
No, I'm talking about the band.
Oh right, okay, that's a no then.
So this is the U47.
This is, we're not quite. It's about as close as you can get in a model that isn't as long as its tail.
It's not to scale, is it?
No, it's not to scale.
Germans must have been tiny. No wonder they lost.
So
Underwater button.
Untersea boot. Right. So that's.
Oh, we've got a picture here.
Likes to check the card stock. Yeah.
That's quality.
That's quality. That is a quality photo.
180 GSM.
And it's in the
there,
middle. It's good quality.
Centered.
A lot of blue going on there, but I suppose it's not seeing it.
Well, yeah. Obviously, our family viewers will be looking at a nice, clean, colourful picture, which will be pressed across my face on the screen there. So that is the U47 with the bull on the conning tower, which it earned when it sunk the HMS Royal Oak, which we'll talk about in a minute. And that is it returning from a combat patrol in about 1940.
Who took the photo?
Another U-boat, which was returning to port with them. At that point, it would have been operating probably out of Lorient or maybe from Kiel. I'm not sure.
Do you think, judging by what these guys, do you think you went,
Oi!
and bang, took the picture? Or do you think they planned it?
It's probably just a spur of the moment thing.
Just want to clear that
You
up.
can actually see Captain Prien at the top there in the content.
Is that him?
It's him.
Has he got a gun in his hand?
No, he'll have binoculars probably.
I mean, it's not a passport photo, but
Well, it's been that photo is actually tiny. It's about that size in reality, but it's been AI enhanced and colourised. But that is the U47. There's very few photos of it, but that is one of them, and we've got it.
must be worth quite a bit of money.
We have. So disappeared at sea. Now, obviously, we're going to get into all of that eventually, but we're going to start off our little backstory by having a look at the boat itself. Yard number 582 was laid down as a Type 7B at Friedrich Krupp Germaniawerft shipyards in Kiel Harbour on 25th of February 1937 and began service on the 17th of December 1938 as U47
The vessel was one of the first B variants, which were designed to address design limitations of the A model. Fuel capacity was improved by adding saddle tanks to the hull, increasing range to 8,500 nautical miles. An extra rudder was attached to the stern for greater mobility, and an alteration to the aft deck plate configuration allowed 3 extra torpedoes to be stowed on board. Superchargers were fitted to the diesel engines, resulting in a range of between 2,800 and 3,200 metric horsepower. The electric motors were capable of producing around 750 horsepower when the boat was submerged. A total of 24 B variant U-boats were constructed before the much more prolific Type 7C became the desired version.
This particular vessel is one of the B variants, which were designed to address limitations of the A model. Extra fuel capacity, saddle tanks, which is these ballistas on the side, which basically gave it 8,500 mile range.
8,500?
Yeah. That's obviously surface running. I mean, U-boats are a boat. They're not a submarine, really. They're a boat that is built to work to coast across the surface, and then when it needs to, it can submerge. So, above water, you get 8,500 miles out of it. Below water, you get about 90. So it's massively reduced, but they have to run on electric motors underwater.
Yeah, they're using a different propulsion system.
Yeah, because obviously if you ran diesel engines underwater, you'd suffocate everyone. Flank speed, or as fast as it can go, is about 17.7 knots, about 20 mile an hour.
That's pretty slow.
It is pretty
That's
slow.
really slow.
Why are they going so slow?
That's as much power as they can...
That's all they could get out of
That's
it.
all they can get out of it.
Do we have a comparison for like a modern day equivalent?
I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, a modern day submarine, you can stay underwater for up to 3 months.
What
Because
about
of the advances in
propulsion
technology.
wise?
Propulsion, it depends on what you're looking at. Like an Akula class Russian sub, you're looking anywhere between 30 and 40 mile an hour. So most of the very successful Type 7s had their success early on because they were essentially unopposed to begin with in the Atlantic until we started developing tactics to counter them. They were almost invulnerable. They'd suffered very little losses in the first couple of years. That all changed later on, but we'll get into that. So this particular boat, U47, was under the command of Captain Gunter Prien. We'll have a bit of a word about him.
Gunter.
Gunter.
Gunter Prien joined the Reichsmarine in January of 1933, at a time when the German rearmament programme increased from a steady flow to a massive industry-wide juggernaut. He initially served on board Königsberg, a light cruiser that was mainly used for naval training. October of 1935 saw him join the U-boat force. He served on board U-26, which conducted non-intervention patrols in the Atlantic and the Oberon Sea during the Spanish Civil War in 1938. Promoted to Oberleutnant zur See on January 1st, 1939, he quickly gained his first commission, U47. Prien and his crew soon earned legendary status after a sneak attack on the HMS Royal Oak, a Revenge-class battleship, on October 14th. It was harboured in Scapa Flow near the Orkney Islands, northwest of Scottish mainland, a body of water that is notoriously difficult to successfully navigate in a submarine, particularly as it had been blockaded by the Royal Navy to prevent further incursions. The sneak attack sank the ship, where it remains to this day, taking over 800 sailors with it. While the 25-year-old Royal Oak was largely obsolete by 1939, the destruction of a fully manned, fully armed, and fully fueled battleship at its home port sent shockwaves through the Royal Navy and the Admiralty. But once it was discovered that the attack was performed by a solitary U-boat in the dead of night, that had subsequently disappeared without a trace, the impact was far greater. In Kiel, the captain and crew were received as national heroes upon their return, with Prien being awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. His career with U47 would take him and his crew on 10 patrols across the Atlantic, gaining notoriety with each successful attack on Allied shipping. On February 20th of 1941, U47 would depart Lorient for the last time.
So quite an achievement. Obviously, when he got back to Kiel, he was a national hero, and obviously throughout the UK, he was infamous by this point. So that's when they got the bull painted onto the boat. But it was a mark of honour because most U-boat crews didn't paint anything.
Do you reckon he got a tattoo of it as well?
He might have done. You know what the sailors are like. They like to,
They love their tattoos, don't they?
like to carve themselves up.
He would have done, yeah.
Anyway, on February the 20th, they would depart from Lorient, which is on the west coast of France, for the last time. And that's when they went out on their 10th patrol, which lasted for a number of days, and then they would vanish. So we'll now talk about patrol number 10.
This is the mystery.
We're getting there.
Is this the mystery?
We're almost there.
Ooh, slow build up.
Slow build.
Patrol 10 would take U47 and her crew north, past the coastline of Brittany and far out into the Atlantic Ocean. By February 25th, the boat was positioned 120 miles northwest of the Irish coast, having covered nearly 800 miles from port, and was shadowing Convoy OB-290. She attacked and sank 3 ships on the 26th, and damaged a 4th, in addition to acting as a navigational relay. U47 subsequently helped to guide in a force of anti-shipping aircraft to attack the vessels of the convoy, which resulted in the sinking of 7 further ships. This was, in fact, the most successful German air attack of the war in the Atlantic Ocean. In the following days, U47 made headway further north. By the night of March 6th, she had entered a patrol area above the Rockall Trough, which lies southeast of Iceland in an expanse of the Atlantic near to the Rockall Basin. U-99, U-70 and U-A were all in the area. The 4 submarines engaged Convoy OB-293. At just after 5 AM on March 7th, Prien turned his eye to the British whale factory ship Terjeviken, a colossal oil tanker of 20,638 gross tons. At the time, this was the largest whale factory ship in the world. Such a prize was impossible for Prien to ignore, and he had oriented his boat for a torpedo attack. Launching 2 G7E torpedoes, they managed to strike the tanker, but it remained afloat. both U-70 and U-99 would also subsequently attack with torpedoes. The 3 that were launched by U-70 missed, but Kretschmer's torpedo struck the port side of the massive ship, and the vessel was abandoned. It later capsized, but refused to sink until it was scuttled by gunfire on March 14th.
Anyway, after this engagement, obviously the escort ships came. You know, everyone's panicking, stuff's blowing up, people are jumping off ships, things are on fire. Busy night. So the escort ships come in and there's a big counter-attack. They start depth charging the shit out of the place. U-99 performed a crash dive. That's Kretschmer, the guy who hit it last.
Okay.
They crash dived really quick and just literally sat as low as they could and then just waited out the depth charging, thinking that they wouldn't be able to escape. Which they wouldn't, because later on they would be targeted by another set of corvettes and they were captured, including the captain, Kretschmer. So he came back to Britain as a prisoner of war.
Really?
Yeah. UA suffered a hit from HMS Wolverine but managed to escape. She would later be attacked off of Ireland by Wolverine and HMS Verity, two other vessels. U-70 though, the ones who weren't really on the ball, they were battered. They got absolutely hammered. I think they endured something like 48 depth charge attacks. Now, one at 50 metres is enough to destroy a U-boat, so they were panicking.
Really quite uncomfortable experience.
Yeah, very uncomfortable, yeah. They were forced to surface, crew abandoned ship, and the boat was attacked with gunfire and sunk. 20 of the guys on board were killed, but 25 got captured.
Is that the whole crew?
Yeah, 45 is about right for one of those boats. U-47, which was originally credited to Wolverine as a sinking, they think that UA, the other one that managed to escape, was actually the one they were targeting. But a lot of people originally at the time thought they were attacking U-47. In any case, the subsequent whereabouts of the boat after this attack, about 5:15 in the morning, is nobody knows anything.
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery.
Which is a mystery.
It's why we're here. It's why we've got Ed in.
That's why I'm here.
We brought him here to sort us out. In a nutshell, big attack by 4 U-boats on a convoy. All goes pear-shaped because they get spotted. One of them just dips out, waits it out. One's destroyed. One escapes, and U-47 is the unknown factor.
I like that version.
Quick and easy.
Quick.
So, thanks for watching, and we'll be back in about...
Succinct, mate. Succinct. I'm building this up piece by piece. So I don't know who you want to...
What are you doing?
I don't know if you can work
I can already see what... He's only done 2 curves, and I already know what it is.
Tennis racket?
Yes.
Tennis racket.
Tennis racket.
It's a tennis racket in a nudist colony, maybe. There we go.
Well, could go other ways. You never know. See where we end up. I don't know.
That's disturbingly detailed, is what that is.
Mate, don't. Hysteria, me. I've seen some of your photograph quality, like, where you use watercolours. Yeah.
Ed was the recipient.
I've got a few of those.
Got a few of those.
Go. So
there's knocking around.
That there, minor effort at
Are
best.
we going to see that later, or...?
No, I don't think anyone needs to see that.
Okay. Actually, I agree. Actually,
just for
I
you,
don't think anyone needs to see that.
Do you want to put that away now?
Yeah, we can do. Yeah, we'll bang it over it. Unless it wants to...
It helps me follow the story.
Yeah, it helps to follow the story.
Draw a few little lines around.
Yeah. That's what you get your pen there for. Just a bit of that. We'll get it framed for you when you're done. A little memento. Get the War Mysteries team to sign it for you. It'll be worth less than it is now.
Yeah. Still, it's on good paper. So
It's good quality.
Yeah.
180
You
GSM.
can't deny that.
Can't go wrong.
Can't deny that.
Top production here.
Have you still got them all? The old ones?
Yeah.
You still got them all?
I couldn't bring the folder down because it broke apart.
But you still got all the old art, apart
Yeah.
from that one of Camilla we screwed up. So
we burned it. Yeah.
maybe at some point we should have a competition
Competition
where we
time.
give away all the art.
Let's have a competition
Which-
so people can win a load of pictures that I printed from Wikipedia.
Signed.
Signed.
Some of them are signed.
There
This
you go,
one's signed by
signed.
Prien.
No.
And the War Mysteries
he-
team.
No, definitely want to get Prien signing that. He's a long way down.
Well, we don't know. It's a mystery.
Well,
Yeah.
right. There are 4 theories which we're going to have to smash our way through. So the first theory that we are going to examine then is that U-47 struck a mine.
U47 was assumed lost west of the northern barrage between Iceland, the Faroe Islands and the Orkneys, an expanse of ocean in which over 100,000 anti-ship and anti-submarine mines were laid by the British Navy between 1940 and 1943. So infamous was this waterbound minefield that it gained the nickname Rosengarten during the war. The Mark 17 mines were contact-fused explosive charges housed inside a buoyant shell, the whole suspended over an anchor weight and attached by a wire rope. These could be suspended as deep as 90 metres. Layers of these mines at differing depths ensured that submarines could not simply evade them by travelling underneath, although planned gaps existed to allow passage of friendly vessels. Passing blindly through a mine blockade was a huge risk. Striking a naval mine could spell immediate disaster for a U-boat, particularly if submerged at the time. Naval mines could cause catastrophic damage very quickly, in some cases buckling hatches and torpedo tube doors, making escape impossible. Of the 1,149 U-boats that were destroyed during the war, scuttled or otherwise lost, between 35 and 40 are now thought to have been sunk after striking a sea mine. If U47 was unfortunate enough to have struck one, she would have sunk into an area around the Rockall Basin, waters that are between 1,000 and 3,000 metres deep.
Which is pretty much doom, isn't it? Let's be honest. You're not if you're going down.
It's a long way.
So it's a long way down, but it's not thought particularly likely that they hit a mine, because by this point, I mean, they know about this minefield enough to have named it.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have been quite careful to have avoided it, and plus, the part of the point of operating from the west coast of France was so that they didn't have to go anywhere near it. You know, because originally they were coming across the top of Britain from German harbours and Norwegian harbours, whereas now they can just come up from France and they've got the Atlantic Ocean straight in front of them. So there is some evidence to support it. I mean, it was in the area, but otherwise, perhaps not too likely.
Would they have detected the explosion and...
Maybe. I mean, there's reports from this convoy battle that went on, which we'll hear about in a while, that there was, you know, a boat, or what looked like a U-boat underwater on fire and all that kind of thing, like a red glow. But a mine going off is pretty recognisable, obviously, it produces a surface plume, whatever happens. So nothing like that was spotted. But then, having said that, they were depth charging the crap out of the place, so you never know, really, I suppose.
You never know.
Oh, I missed it.
Anyway, theory number 2 is that the boat succumbed to a diving accident.
U47 was in a position to be attacked by at least 2 corvettes and 4 destroyers following her assault on the Terje-Viken, and following conventional Wolfpack tactics, would have immediately dived to evade her pursuers. Whilst rare, a number of submarine diving accidents occurred during the war for a number of different reasons, be they mechanical failures within the vessel, forgetful crew leaving hatches open, faulty hatch or torpedo bay seals, ruptures caused by sudden changes of water pressure overloading weakened sections of the hull, or perhaps worst, exceeding the crush depth of the boat.
They would very rarely go close to crush depth unless they were in danger.
How deep can it go?
Between 250 and 295 metres is their absolute maximum. It's very rare they'd go that deep, if at all, for very long, because you're pushing your luck there, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously there's going to be a disparity in the quality of the manufacture, so it's an estimate, really.
The Kriegsmarine in particular lost at least 5 U-boats to such accidents during World War II. U5, U7, U346, U1206 and U2331. U47 sank in sufficiently deep waters that it will be essentially unfeasible to recover, and so this theory is unable to offer evidence beyond educated guesswork. Only 2 Type 7 vessels were known to be lost in diving accidents, and Prien was an experienced commander, making it unlikely to have been caused by human error. If U47 did fall victim to a diving accident, it is much more likely to have been due to an unknown mechanical failure.
5 Kriegsmarine U-boats lost during the war to diving accidents. One of them was unknown, but there was a malfunction during a dive procedure on the U7, an irrecoverable crash dive, which essentially means they dove too quickly and couldn't recover because the weight of the boat and the engines were pushing it down so far they couldn't undo their momentum. That was U346, which was a Type 7, and that obviously would have imploded. A malfunction in the plumbing system on the U1206, but that was a toilet.
Big German poos.
Yeah, there was a specific way you're supposed to essentially flush the toilet on the boat, and he did it in the wrong order and flooded the boat and sunk it. That was the captain. They scuttled that boat in the end.
Hit the fan there.
It did. Well, actually, it would have come back up and into the boat somewhere. So
Somewhere in the boat, yeah. Probably
Yeah,
along
floating
with,
around
Probably
down
along
there.
with more poo. Hope there aren't any more.
there are more. And then there's another one that they began a dive whilst they were under reverse power and managed to flood the boat like a bunch of idiots. But in any case, U47, if it did sink, which I imagine it probably did, because when something disappears at sea, there's only one way for it to go. It sank in sufficiently deep waters that it will be unfeasible to recover it. So we'll never be able to offer any solid evidence to support, well, any of the theories really.
But they would have sent down some kind of video submarine, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they know that it's down there?
I'm not sure they ever have. It's never been discovered.
Yeah, it hasn't been discovered.
They've got the rough site, but the coordinates are too round for it. There's no pointage, there's no decimalisation of it. They're very sort of rough.
On the next episode, we will be going down.
We'll be going down there. We will be. Obviously, there's a few companies that we won't be using. Anyway, Prien being the commander that he was an experienced captain, so it's unlikely that the boat was lost to a diving area. But anything can happen in the heat of battle, as you know, Ed.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Absolutely anything.
And anything does happen.
Anything does happen. Usually here, on the in the studio. Speaking of which, how's catering getting on? You cooking for us later?
Where's our lunch?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
What you doing us?
Some of the bestest and meanest dogs going.
Dogs.
Yeah. Korean special.
Oh, Korean special.
Yeah, I told you. Korean food.
So not very likely, I don't think. They're quite experienced. I mean, if you're pootling about in one of these, you know navigation. You've got a decent crew.
He's not messing up the toilet, is he?
No, he's not going to be reverse flushing.
You don't get a sticker on your boat for messing up toilets.
That's right.
So we have no idea
Yet.
where the
Yet.
submarine is yet.
Or at all. So let's depth charge our way into theory number 3,
Oh.
which is that they were depth charged.
Shortly after the attack on the Terje-Viken, the convoy escort ships began to rapidly deploy, searching for the U-boats. Flower-class corvettes HMS Arbutus and HMS Camellia scored a number of hits on U-70 with expeditious use of depth charges, forcing her to surface. An intense naval gun attack destroyed the submarine. Approximately 5 hours later, a U-boat was caught on the surface within yards of a destroyer, believed to be U-47. Showing signs of hull stress and buckling, this vessel managed to dive quickly, but was not able to escape from the savage follow-up depth charge attack of the pursuing escorts.
It literally just pops up right next to the boat. Naturally, everyone cacks their pants. They believe it's U-47. It's got hull stress, some buckling, but it manages to dive again real quick. So they've figured out what's going on. But they weren't able to escape from the depth charge attack that followed. Not just from that boat, but from other ones as well, which were coming in, blood rage.
Later reports from escort ships mentioned that a red glow deep below the surface was observed amidst the barrage by sailors on the deck, with flames even breaking the surface, and was regarded as a kill. Following the examination of documentary evidence that has become available in recent times, this attack, conducted by HMS Verity and HMS Wolverine, is now believed to have been directed against UA. The U-boat survived this engagement, albeit with heavy damage, and returned to Lorient on the 18th of March for repair. From the early morning of March 7th, the ships protecting convoy OB-293 made various attacks over a number of hours, expending over 100 depth charges. This would have been an incredibly dangerous attack for submarine crews to have been caught in. A single depth charge was capable of completely destroying a U-boat up to 25 feet away, and could cause severe damage up to a range of 50 feet. Even beyond this, hull damage could still occur, affecting the manoeuvrability of the vessel, as well as inflicting extreme anxiety on the crewmen. For this reason, depth charges were generally considered to be just as much a weapon of psychological warfare as they were a traditional munition. As of 2023, the total count of U-boats destroyed or sunk by depth charge attacks stands at 393. This equates to fully 33% of the entire U-boat force.
A single depth charge was capable of completely destroying a U-boat anywhere between 25 to 50 feet. That's quite a way. Obviously it's a massive vessel, but 50 feet is a long way off.
Yeah, it's a fair distance.
So they haven't got to be pinpoint accurate.
I suppose
it's got to be close enough.
That scale of 25 to 50 feet is affected by the fact that depth is going to change the vulnerability of the pressure vessel.
Yeah, obviously if they're further down underwater, the water pressure itself is greater, and therefore the change in pressure, which is what depth charges are all about. It's nothing to do with explosive damage. It's all about pressure waves, which can buckle a hull.
Sound and pressure.
And obviously they can deafen people underwater. Obviously, the further down you are, the greater the water pressures around you, and so the greater the differential is. So they're very dangerous. Given that they were right in the middle of the attack, there's a lot going on. There were some reports of, a glowing mass under the water. It is entirely possible they were hit with charges and just went straight down. Nobody has confirmed that they've managed to take out U47 for sure, but obviously there were reports coming in from all over the boats, the escort corvettes and the destroyers that were going at them.
They would see debris, wouldn't they, and oil on the surface?
Sometimes, yes, you could see debris or oil come up, but obviously that's only usually if the boat breaks up as a result of the impact. Sometimes they'd just get a nice big hole in them and they'd sink, and that'd be it. Some U-boats have actually been known to sink intact as well. There's a few that have turned up on, fishing radar or whatever, and you can see maybe 2/3 of the boat sticking out of the ocean bed. Quite impressive. You see the sonar imagery, and they're completely intact, but obviously rusty. So that's theory number 3. Obviously, the final theory that we're going to look at is self-destruction.
Ooh.
A chilling theory. It was suggested that U47 might have been struck by one of her own torpedoes, having launched with perhaps a defective, damaged, or incorrectly fitted rudder. This would have resulted in a circuitous or spiralling trajectory, with the torpedo ultimately returning to its point of origin. Had this been the case, U47 would have been fantastically unlucky, as the G7, T1 and T2 torpedoes suffered from design flaws that seriously curtailed their effectiveness. Crews operating with the Generation 1 G7 experienced an operational failure rate of 30%, suffering from faulty directional gyros, loose or over-tightened rudders, weak batteries, faulty magnetic triggers, cracked motor manifolds, and vacuum leaks causing the weapons to sink too far on launch, travelling uselessly beneath their target. These failures were a curse to submariners in the Kriegsmarine all the way to the end of 1941, when more reliable anti-shipping weapons finally became available.
What have I got? I found them in my pocket. Why are they in my pocket? You put them in there.
What have you got? What? Spoons?
Yeah. You say, why are they?
I don't know why they're in there. Why are they in there?
Well, at least they're not the handcuffs this time.
Yeah, knob
Why have you brought them in here?
for Yuri. Don't know.
Fury. Anyway, having launched with perhaps a defective, damaged or incorrectly fitted rudder, this would have resulted in a circuitous or spiral trajectory with the torpedo ultimately returning to its point of origin.
Really?
Happens quite a lot.
Fire it out.
Yep.
Back
So
yourself.
the way, obviously, because they were mass manufacturing these weapons, the G7A torpedo was badly faulty. Sometimes it'd strike a ship and not explode. Sometimes it'd launch it out into the sea and it'd just weave its way off, the motor would die and it'd just sink. They were pretty faulty, pretty poorly manufactured. They had an operational failure rate of something like 30%.
Wow.
So almost 1 in 3 you launch, something's going to go wrong with it. Which may explain why U70 didn't manage to hit the tanker. Launched 3 torpedoes, no hits. They may in fact have hit the boat, but just didn't explode. You have to be pretty damned unlucky for 3 of them to do that though.
A submarine being sunk by its own torpedo is not a situation without precedent. On the 25th of March 1944, the USS Tullabee of the US Navy was patrolling the waters off the Palau Islands in the Pacific. After launching a torpedo attack against a shipping convoy in the rain squall, Tullabee exploded in the water. There was only one survivor, gunner's mate 2nd class Weldon Kai Kendall, who was captured by the Japanese destroyer Wakatake. It was discovered after the war that it had been struck by its own torpedo, which had run a circular course. Similarly, on October 25th of the same year, USS Tang was on patrol in the Taiwan Strait, having attacked a number of Japanese convoys. Launching their 24th and last Mark 18 electric torpedo at a stricken transport in an attempt to sink it, the weapon immediately broached upon leaving the tube, curving hard to the left and entering a declining elliptical trajectory. Tang attempted to manoeuvre inside the turning circle, but was too slow, operating under emergency power. 20 seconds after launch, Tang was struck directly in the aft torpedo room, causing catastrophic damage.
So 20 seconds after launch, it smashed into the ship, hit the aft torpedo room, which is at the back of the boat where they store torpedoes. The hole was mammoth,
Yeah.
as you can imagine. 5 men survived, 78 died.
5 survived.
Yeah.
A direct hit to the torpedo room.
Yes, it was mental. Loads of people were killed immediately. But a lot of them actually survived the initial impact, but couldn't get off the boat. They had escape towers, which they could get into, and it's basically a double airlock. So you get into one bit, you purposefully flood it, and then you can get out. Many of the dead may actually have survived if it wasn't for a follow-up depth charge attack by a Japanese ship, which caused an electrical fire in the battery compartment, which was melting bulkheads. It was that hot. So some guys that were in there were just boiled alive.
Finally, it is theorised that either U305 or U377 may have also suffered a self-launched torpedo strike. Both vessels disappeared in the North Atlantic between the 15th and 16th of January 1944, with all hands lost at 50 plus crew per boat.
They're not very good keeping track of who's hit who, are they?
No. Obviously, they had a huge transmission station, which was basically communicating to all the U-boats, which is what these extendable masts are for. They'd use that to pick up signals, and then obviously if they had to, they'd submerge or. But no, there's still a number of U-boats unaccounted for. We'll get into those later on. So they may have been hit by their own torpedo, which would have been horrific. And obviously they're designed to cripple and sink boats, so you know.
You're not going to come off very well, are you?
You're not going to be surviving. No, there's only, I think, one account of a one submarine hitting another submarine underwater with a torpedo, ever. Because obviously they're normally target shipping. So it's a lot rarer than people might think, but being hit by your own torpedo would wreck it.
Yeah.
You'd be buggered.
And it's embarrassing as well.
It's very embarrassing. So while you're going down, you've got to deal with the humiliation as well. Not for long, but you'd be pretty annoyed, I think. I'd be a bit pissed off if I'd hit my own boat, really.
So theory number 1 is just a summary.
Struck in a mine. Your second theory is that they had a diving accident, perhaps left a hatch open, or torpedo doors were open or something.
Some toilet accident.
A depth charge attack, which I personally think is most likely, given what they were going through at the time, or struck by their own weapons. Which, like I say, is not without precedent.
I suppose you could argue though that those 4 theories could be used to suggest what the fate might be of any submarine that's missing, any U-boat that's missing.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be very rare that anybody would have the wherewithal about them to transmit what's going on while their boat's sinking. It all comes down to how survivable the incident is, really. Some are known about, others, obviously they've all gone down, but they've later discovered the U-boat resting in water where it's recoverable. Where this thing must have gone down, it's so deep, it's basically impossible ever to find it. Not least of the fact that where it sank in the Rockall Trough was a disposal ground for submarines later in the century. So old submarines were decommissioned and scuttled there.
Litter bugs.
Yeah, pretty much. So there are hundreds near where this must have gone down. Trying to identify that amongst all that wreckage, even as spread apart as they might be, is going to be nearly impossible. So it's a bit unsolvable, really.
They'd all definitely be dead now anyway, wouldn't they?
I would imagine. So, yeah.
If they hit themselves, they're not going to say, "Oh, comms."
We've bollocksed up.
Yeah.
You're not going to believe this.
You are not going to believe this. Yeah, I personally think they were hit with a depth charge in the initial foray and disappeared so quickly in the madness that no one really noticed. They went radio silent, as we know. There were no further position reports, and obviously there comes a certain amount of time that passes where they haven't come back to port, they've heard nothing, and they tend to write it off. It was quite a blow. Obviously there was a lot of propaganda in the UK afterwards. Churchill authorised a leaflet campaign that was dropped as close as they could get to Germany, with leaflets written in German, of course, but saying, "Where is Prien?" Because the German Navy tried to cover up the fact that it had been lost.
It's a bit of a celebrity.
Yeah, he was a real celebrity. I think it was something like the 10th or the 11th most successful U-boat of the war, even by 1941. So it was a real heavy hitter early on.
Impressive.
There we go. So gone, but obviously it's not quite the end of the story.
I reckon they're living their best lives.
Positive attitude there from catering.
They survived that attack and they went, "You know what, lads, that's it. Just found some island somewhere. Just chilled out."
That's the Nazi attitude we want.
The Battle of the Atlantic, as it eventually became known, was the longest continuous military campaign of World War II, and was ultimately a war of attrition. Great Britain relied heavily upon imported goods, requiring 1 million tons of supplies each week in order to continue to fight. Germany correctly surmised that a naval blockade, coupled with the stealth and precision of the U-boat, would be significant factors in crippling the Allied war effort. Development of the cooperative attack paradigm, known as the Wolfpack, presented an unpredictable and deadly threat to convoy shipping. Early on, despite limited numbers, the U-boat enjoyed almost unfettered success in the Atlantic, having entered into hostile action immediately upon declaration of war. For example, U-30, which was among those U-boats already deployed at the outbreak of war, attacked the passenger ship SS Athenia just 10 hours after war was declared, resulting in the deaths of 117 people, 28 of which were American citizens, a neutral party at that time. U-47, however, became one of the most successful U-boats of the war, despite her relatively short operational period. Sinking the Royal Oak at Scapa Flow bestowed heroic status upon her crew in Germany, and one of infamy throughout the British Isles. The submarine had claimed 31 ships across 10 patrols by the time of her disappearance in 1941. For comparison, U-68, the closest successor, operated until April 1944 and sank just 2 more ships, for a total of 33. It is apparent that the crew of the U-47 could have claimed far more victories had they survived the OB-290 encounter. There were no reported sightings, nor any further communications from U-47 subsequent to the morning of March 7th, consistent with a total loss of the vessel with all hands. Whatever the circumstances surrounding her disappearance, she sank into waters so deep that locating the wreck is incredibly unlikely, and wherever she may lie, U-47 now serves only as a silent memorial.
What?
How long was I out? How long have I been out?
Not long enough.
I hate it when this happens.
So that is pretty much it. That's the mystery of U-47. Disappeared early March. No one knows where it went. What happened?
Well, I reckon depth charge with you. I reckon.
They were caught in the mayhem.
You
You can be the best commander on earth, but if you can't move your boat fast enough.
Yeah, I'm thinking something else, something more embarrassing perhaps.
You reckon
a
flush the toilet?
loose hatch, a torpedo, their own torpedo that hit them.
Yeah, could well have been.
Something that they don't want to admit, so there's no record of it.
It would be more amusing.
Because someone would have loved to have claimed this as a...
It was a real propaganda coup for a long time afterwards. It was one of the most famous
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
people in the German Navy. You know, the name was known everywhere, Prien. As we've said before, when we looked at U-234 back in the day, 75% of the Kriegsmarine was lost at sea, of all the men that served. tens of thousands of men. So it was the most dangerous service to operate in during the Second World War by a considerable margin.
Would you want to go on a submarine?
I wouldn't want to go on a submarine, no. No.
Don't think I would either. No showers, hot bunking.
Yeah.
So you'd be sharing a slim, sweaty bed with other men on board. Oftentimes there'd be radio silence for hours, if not days. And
Probably no Wi-Fi down there.
yeah, you'd be rubbish.
Yeah.
Rubbish connection down there. You would,
Can't
Hope-
get YouTube or anything.
can't.
Couldn't even watch War Mysteries. down there.
Yeah.
Maybe for a laugh, like.
Yeah,
have a
look
little
around.
Look around.
Yeah.
Yeah, have a wander around, I suppose.
If you ever find yourself in Chicago, you can walk through a Type 9, I think it is out there, U505. That's massive. Yeah, in the Museum Science and Industry, I think it is, MSI.
Yes.
All our Chicago-based viewers.
Yeah, get yourself down to the. Get yourself down there. I'm sure they have. It's like.
Well, no, it'd be one of those things when you live down the road from it. You've never been, have you?
Don't want to see it. It's just
Never
like
been, have you?
just furniture to them, really. Isn't it?
Apparently, Northampton has the Grosvenor Centre. Never been anywhere
Never
near
been
it.
there, of course not. Yeah, wouldn't want to either. Should tell.
We've done a lot of submarines now, haven't we?
We have. We do live a submarine here on War Mysteries, of course. So, if you have any questions or comments about this episode, of course, help yourself to our comments pit down there. Thank you very much to Ed for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
He's come a lot. He flew here just for this. So
on the budget, the War
on
Mysteries.
the old budget,
has got
we've got
to
an hour
be-
budget.
It's one of the main reasons actually we can't really do much about the studio, isn't it? Because it all gets spent on Ed's
Yeah.
first class flights.
Yeah.
Has to be first
Has to be
class.
first class.
Yeah.
He's not coming out here for less.
So
So
it's
we suggested, a video call or something, but obviously
I won't have it.
he won't have it.
And if you guys have a theory that is not depth charge or a mistake, be interesting to hear that.
yeah, something to do with the episode.
Very true, yeah. Welcome back any time, of course, once we've saved enough money to get him back
Well,
out
I'll be back
there.
again, won't you? Definitely.
I'll be
He'll
back
be
again.
He'll be back. He's a regular now. He's basically part of the crew.
Yeah, I'll be back again.
He is the
Back
crew.
again.
We'll see you in the next one, whatever that may be.
Buttery biscuit base.
Do you want to show your face on camera?
No.
Just so you can say you've been in one.
The crew.
You sure?
I'm good just shouting from out back.
You don't want to. You definitely don't want to get in it.
I'm still playing with me nuts if I'm honest.
Oh God. All right. Okay. Well, on that note, then.
You've got some serious editing to do.